now, or the thought today is just play small area games and they get more puck touches and they will develop because they're doing everything they have to do in a game in terms of skills. They don't have the skill, and you can teach them in a station deliberately. So I'm working with last night a U13 girls team with the coaching staff on the ice, plus a skills expert who's really good at the small area games and decision making, and not as detailed as you and I from our era are on the teaching.
Right.
And I've sort of decided, I thought, gee, that would be a time for me to be able to teach them to teach.
Yep.
But it isn't working. So I'm ready to say small area games. I may try to do 15 minutes where I lead it from the bench and teach the tactical skill that they can't do, and then let them play their small area games. Because all the deliberate drills we've been trying to get them to do, copycat our drills, my drills, just don't pay off as fast or as much. They're random. There's decision making built into them, but they're still structured drills.
Yep.
So I think for most coaches out there that aren't educated like we were in our era, teachers, small area games to me will pay off much more than trying to run deliberate drills and be frustrated because they can't do them. They don't have the skills to do them. You let them play and they might develop those skills, but they have to figure it out with the skills they've got. So
I agree with you, Wally. And it's, USA Hockey got onto the small area games. I did a couple of videos for them, but, it was 15 years ago. And it's like everything else, though. When I go into a rink and watch a small area game going on the ice, they typically are at the end of practice as a reward or something. And they're, the kids are kind of flying around. But I don't think that just playing 3-on-3 cross ice is, without any structure in the game. I don't think that's particularly useful. And so we put, you got to pass at 3 seconds, or if you catch the puck off that pass, you have to do an escape, or you got to do a regroup behind the net, or you've got a joker. I think that's Tom's word. Behind the net you're attacking, so you're playing 4-on-3. There's lots of ways to structure a small area game. And then when they, at least at the age I'm coaching, 3-on-3, the kid will be in the corner, and the other two kids, they're way out, they're 30 feet away. We're trying to I talk to them about things in sort of bigger pictures, but you got to get closer. You got to one touch. You have to do this. You have to do that. They love doing it, and it makes them better. The other thing we've really focused on is getting them to come to the middle when they get into the offensive zone. To don't just go racing up at the outside, because that's what everybody does, and it doesn't particularly. Even if you're lucky enough to get around that D, you're probably so deep in the zone that you've got, it's getting pretty crowded in front of the net. So we talk about the big 90 coming across the blue line, and instead of going at the defenseman, move into a space where the defenseman has to come to you. And that buys you that 1 or 2 seconds for, if you're doing a center drive, for one of your teammates to get down, in front of the net. And we've been working on that for a month. Last night's game, 3 kids said to me when they came off the ice, "Hey, coach, did you see that big 90 I did out there?" And so it's a repetitive theme. Huh? No, you're on mute, Wally, but it's...
Can you explain big 90? Is it middle drive, or is the left winger driving across into the middle, or the winger?
I prefer to have the middle drive, but sometimes you don't get what you want, right?
Yeah.
And, to me, it's just getting them, but they got to have good skating skills to do a big 90. They got to be able to really come in and sort of sell it to the, outside to the D. And then they got to get on that, if you're coming up the right wing, you got to get hard on that inside edge of your right skate.
Yeah.
And come, not at an angle. You got to come across parallel to the blue line to make it really effective. It's also called the Gretzky, I guess. Gretzky had a little loop in his. But I like to teach things like that because they're easy. All the kids can eventually end up doing it. And it's really effective. I mean, it changes the whole dynamics of your offense. So, yeah, it's fun.
Now, I'm old school. Hell, middle drive, I don't know when it started. Tom's always talked about getting in the middle of the ice. I was brought up in the Howie Meeker era where we were taught to drive wide and drive the net and funnel, which the D want you to do. So we taught eye-ups with the trailer. It was a 3-man attack, an attack triangle, but the top player eyed up and you could receive a drop pass. And I felt at that time you had to teach the attack triangle or the 2-on-1 eye-up. And then we started to teach, and I love the term 90, where you can do an outside-in 90 or an inside-out 90.
Right.
And all kinds of things open up. And the Soviets did that back in the 70s. They were crossing and dropping, crossing and keeping. They weren't middle driving to take you deep. But the whole concept of using the middle of the ice today, I really love that term, Big 90. I think I'm probably going to have to give up on losing sleep over the fact they can't eye up and trail with 3 attacking forwards.
Right.
But that's the first level of learning to me to an attack. But I just like to see those forwards be able to do that. Now, listen, on the middle drive, if you're driving wide on the right side and you have a middle drive, the left winger will do a 90 to get open in the slot.
Right.
I call that a blow through back in my day. So right now, the attack triangle of 3 is a very flat triangle.
Right.
But it is a triangle. Lateral lanes are open. And
one of the things that they have to be careful of, if you're doing a big 90, 5 feet inside the blue line, or between the blue and top circle, and then you've got another forward coming from the other side, and if you turn the puck over there, in that space, you got a problem. Whereas if you're driving hard and wide, turn it over, it's deep in the zone, and it's easier to recover it.
Yeah.
But I learned from the girls I was coaching 2 years ago, because they would always come down, left or right, whatever, and they struggled with what to do next. So I asked them, I said, what are you thinking about when you cross the blue line and you got a defenseman in front of you? And they said, we're trying to figure out how to get around her. I said, well, why don't we do this? Instead of figuring out how to get around her, why don't you just move quickly into this other space and let her figure out how to come and get you? And they went, oh, that's interesting. So I just changed the thought process of why they should do this, because they're going to have more success and score more goals. And it actually worked pretty well, but I had trouble because we'd been practicing it, but they would never do it because they didn't understand why they should do it. And once we agreed that it'd be more fun to create a problem for the defense, the defenseman, and make them make a decision rather than make the decision to just wait till you get on top of her and then, then poke chuck the puck away from you or tie you up or something like that. So, that was impactful for me. And then going back to the small area game thing, Wally, USA Hockey promotes this big time, but it's still, it might only be 10%, 10 minutes in a practice for most teams at the most. And they probably don't even do it every day. But we, I do it 20 minutes every day. And then the game skill stuff is basically the last 20 minutes is also, that might be 2-on-1, or they might be, but those are still small area games. I would say 2/3 of our practices are small area competitive games. 1/3 is technical skills. Works. These kids are getting better. Holy smokes.
Now you can do that. Tom can do it. I can do it. Average coaches
won't do it.
Won't or can't?
Well, I don't. I sent my practice plan to our B1 coach, and Pee Wee B1s. Excuse me, I've got this cold thing going on, and asked him if he wanted me to come and run his team with it, because we practice at the same time quite often on the other half of the ice. And he said, no, he said, I saw your team play. They really look good, really look fast. In fact, I just got this back from him. He goes, as soon as they get Live Barn, we have a video system called Live Barn.
Yeah, we do here too. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, as soon as we get it back up, I'll watch a couple of your practices. And he said, yeah, it really sounds good. Now, he's a really good guy, and he will. But, I was talking about this with a couple other, you guys do coach mentoring up in Canada, but down here, coaches don't want to be mentored because they think they know everything already. And they're very, very resistant to mentoring and to coaching. Programs that don't want to hire people or even volunteers to mentor coaches because they won't show up. And I think it's too bad, because we have so many kids. We have 35,000 kids playing hockey in Minnesota. And, how many coaches is that? 5,000 or not, or a couple thousand. But USA Hockey coaching education just wears everybody out. And now you have to do it every year. It used to be I'm grandfathered in because I'm older than USA Hockey, but every coach has a lot of online and in-person stuff they have to do every year. It's not good, in my opinion. I mean, it's good for some of them, but it could be.
Now, the role of mentorship, you're still coaching a team.
Yep.
And you're sort of reaching out to help other coaches that are going to maybe come to you.
Yep.
And pursue it. I'm formally hired to mentor 8 teams in an association.
Nice.
And I have literally avoid mentoring coaches. I'm mentoring the coaches on ethical coaching and the bench management and the way they treat people, not on X's and O's.
Yep.
I do that mission statement exercise with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand the coaches mean well, are doing well. They're not abusing the kids. It's fair ice time. Everybody's playing all situations. We have to be happy with one another.
Yeah.
And I'm striving. My main job is, rather than have them, the parents and the coaches, butting heads, I want to see them join their hands and connect their fingers and work together for the good of the kids. Now, mentoring coaches, the technical, I know I could offer so much more, but until they experience what's not working, and come to you for help, and they really, when can they do that? Because they haven't failed enough to do that. So I just have to sit back, show up, drop the odd suggestion now and then, and hopefully they'll take to it. But I do have now probably 3 formal sessions. I'm responsible for directing the company running it to run the ice time I want with those coaches there. And it's a chance to it's forced mentorship at that time to do the things you and I are talking about.
Right.
And this company is paid to do it. And I'm working with the instructors to follow my direction, trying to do it. So I'm literally mentoring these professional instructors at the teaching progressions, the game-like things. And that's where it's at right now. I think the word mentorship is, it's a mystery. It always will be. And you have to get as old as we are to realize how little we know and how much there is to learn.
Yep.
And until you go through spend the time experimenting, failing, trying things differently, it's just all about growth, development, lifelong learning. And in Hockey Alberta, we had a speaker once. He talked about the stages of competence, Hal. And the first stage is unconscious incompetence. We all begin with that.
Yep.
Doing stuff we don't even know it's working or not working. And we have to get to the second stage. And this is something that people don't get to. They don't realize what they're doing is really not accomplishing anything.
Yep.
And it's like learning to use a computer in my day. I didn't know you had to plug it in, let alone how to turn it on, let alone how to access. But I asked for help. And now I was consciously incompetent.
Yeah.
I learned how to ask for help.
Yep.
And as a coach, I did the same thing.
Yep.
I asked for help. I was consciously incompetent, stage 2, and I reached the stage of conscious competence. Hey, this works. I know it works.
Yep.
And I'm learning even now, like last night, for doing things that worked for me if I was doing it, but not for those that were on the ice trying to do it. And I realized I can't get them to do things I was good at.
Right.
So my conscious competence told me to change the program here, getting into small area games more, but allow me 15 minutes of time to teach tactical skill. Now, the third stage, so it's conscious competence. The final stage, we call it Scotty Bowman. It's unconscious competence.
Yeah.
And that's where you're just intuitive. You've done it so often.
Yep.
You make decisions just based on your gut from your experience.
Yep.
So when you think of the stages of competence, coaching, mentorship, it's really a interesting challenge. I do have one story of a friend of mine, Steve Carlisle, who played on the national team. He and his wife shared a principalship at a school, and they had to hire, their math program wasn't doing too well. And he said, Wally, I learned a story from the scouts. When you have a veteran scout, the young scouts all sit behind him, close to him, and look over his shoulder and talk to him.
Yep.
And he said, I brought in a ringer, a young fellow, as a math teacher who I knew was motivated. He just forward thinker, experimenting, doing all kinds of things. And he said the teachers around him saw what was happening and they had to move, they had to catch up.
Yep.
So it's a case of, it's sort of like osmosis where you surround yourself with people that you can learn from and be open to learning. And I think the Sharks epitomize, the essence of it. And unfortunately, we're all going to have to wait till our hair gets grayer or disappears before we can achieve the state of mind that I think we are in satisfied knowing doing what we're doing is making a difference.
Well, Wally, I think it's all really great stuff, and I think one of the issues that we face is that a lot in minor hockey, most of the coaches come in at the lowest level and they work their way up to peewees or bantams, and then they're done. And so, I think about how the game has changed since the 70s, back when we started to coach. And how did we coach in the 70s? How did we coach in the 80s? How do we coach in the 90s, and so on and so forth? And the game continues to change. The rules continue to change. And we've learned a lot about coaching and training and developing players all through the last 40 years or 50 years. So, clearly I don't coach the same way I did 10 years ago. I mean, my core principles are the same, and the way I work with athletes is the same, but the curriculum or the on ice coaching is very different than it was in terms of maybe a less I'm not sure what word I want to do, but again, I'll use USA Hockey's term: let the game teach the game, and try to get kids to be more aware of what's going on the ice rather than just become robot or remote, players. And most coaches don't stay in the game long enough to do that, to acquire that knowledge base that we have, because we've been, we're lifers. And, so I've tried a few things, with our local program, and then the last one before, and like this team we played last night. I mean, they have 1,300 kids or something in that program. And I did a session for the coaches way back in the early 2000s. I said, look, guys, our teams don't win because we're great coaches. We just have better players than our competition. And so you're going to win 85% of your games, whether you do a good job or a poor job. So our job then is to then, how do we do that extra 5% or 10%? Not so much in learning, in winning, but how do we do a really great job helping these kids, number one, love to play hockey, and number two, to really develop some skills and some team skills. Because if we just use winning as the measuring stick, we're all champions. But it resonated with a few of the guys, but not too many. And I did one local one here. I think it was with a bunch of the coaches on it, but it was a video call. And some of the guys liked it, but most of them just tuned it out because think how much time you've spent not only at the rink but away from the rink, learning and getting better as a coach. It's like a full-time, it's almost a full-time job on top of your day job. So most people don't want to spend that much time doing it. So,
now, anyways, one of the things that intrigued me about what you said with those girls, that I think was a change in the way you coach. You said you don't coach like you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You've changed. And it struck me when you talked to those girls and asked them, what about this? What are the possibilities? That, to me, is a very impactful thing on increasing their awareness of the surroundings and the decision-making that goes on applying the skills they've got with their brains in a game situation. And I believe last night we were at the ice and I talked to the assistants. I said, guys, try to ask the players 2 questions. Each of you, just 2 questions, where instead of telling them the answer, you know what the answer is. See if you can ask the question and draw the answer out of them. But they were so busy, locked and dialed into making sure the drill ran, And I didn't follow up with it. I just threw it out there.
Oh,
But that to me is the essence of changing the way you coach. And when I do high performance evaluations here, while I'm present at a game, I have them do what I want between periods as a routine to begin the questioning process. And that means between periods, the coaches talk to each other, then they'll go in the room and they'll talk to the players.
mhm,
And I'm saying, when you talk to each other, ask yourselves the question and share, what did we do well?
yeah,
And then what do we need to do better? And then go into the room and ask the players the same question. And as a head coach, you filter what they say, because now you know what they know what they understand, and what you have to say to them, versus constantly, repeatedly telling them and conditioning them to do what you want because you've told them. You haven't had them think about it.
yep,
So the art of asking is
yep,
versus telling,
yep,
and of course yelling is, we want to avoid it.
yep,
The problem I don't face it in female hockey, where coaches are yelling at the players what to do on the ice all the time. There are some that are very vocal and too loud, and what they're saying is excellent. It's all correct. But
yep.
if the players are distracted on the ice, they're not
They-
thinking for themselves.
Yep,
I just tell them to please keep your voice so the players on the bench can hear your broadcast of what's going on, because it is great.
yeah,
So,
not so
yeah,
loud.
I think that's the biggest change for me, and I still can't do it, El. I've given, I don't coach, but I can't walk the talk. I'm a teller. I'm telling coaches instead of asking them
Yep,
to
you're
get
telling them,
to do what I'm telling them.
yeah,
I should be asking them instead of telling them what to do, and I'm not good at that. The art of mentorship is learning to ask better questions. The art of coaching is learning to ask better questions. And I'm too old for that, because I've been so much of a teller, an overcoacher, a
yeah,
director on my way or the highway, and had success.
yep.
But I think right now, being open minded and learning, and the art of it is still yet to be discovered by all of us.
Well, I think this format that I sort of, moved into on how I'm coaching these kids the last 3 or 4 years, um, I would argue, and I think I can argue successfully, the game outcomes are much better when you do it this way. And it's counterintuitive, but I think when you give the kids a little more freedom, reduce their anxiety that comes from coaches over coaching, and especially when they come off the ice. You know, we were at the local golf club having dinner one night. We're just social members, and the young woman who waited on us, I, as I always do, I like to figure out who they are and what they do. And she's a basketball player at a local D3 college, and she was going to be a fifth-year senior. And I said, "How do you like it?" And she goes, "Well, I hate it." I said, "Why?" Because the coach is so critical of everything we do. If I turn the ball over and I come to the bench and she goes, "You turned the ball over." And she said, I looked at her once, I go, "Why don't you, I know that. Why don't you tell me something to help me?" Pretty brave young lady. And, but this over coaching just squeezes the fun and the joy out of the game.
Yeah.
And if you can if we can let them just have that back, they're going to play better. They're going to play with more freedom, the more creativity, and they will win more games. I know it's true.
Yeah.
So, boys, my day job's calling. So
while you're on, Tom Malloy, the asking question, the story of Terry Johnson playing in the American League. Can you tell it, please?
Well, TJ said, they play so many games, and they decided, I don't know, went to the coach or something and said, what about going around the room and everybody say one thing about the game, change the subject every time, and to get the players' minds on the game and more involved. And he said the first time they did it, guys weren't used to it, and he didn't know if it was a good idea or not. He said the next time you could tell that everybody had thought about what they wanted to say, and he said it really became effective. And we did that at University of Calgary. I do that before every game just to get and the other thing is, if they're saying the same thing as you're saying, they're listening. If they're not, then you've got a little bit of a problem.
Yep. Okay, got to run, boys. See you next week.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yep, nice to see you both. Take care.
All right, take care.
See you guys.
Okay.